Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Dad Speak, a show where dads share their stories about being present in their child's lives with the goal of raising responsible adults. I'm your host, Sarah McClure, and my guest today is Jay Hughes. Jay and I met through a mutual friend, and Jay is a wireless networking professional and a proud dad who moves his family from Boston to Atlanta. So today we're going to talk to him about relocating your family from the East Coast to the South and maintaining stability in your family. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. Yeah, I'm excited to speak to you about this today.
Okay, all right. I like to start off by getting some background information. So I just have a few basic questions I'd like to ask. And the first one is, in what city did you grow up?
So I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. In Boston, we have other towns that people are familiar with. So specifically, I'm from Roxbury, Massachusetts. That's like the inner city of Boston.
Okay.
And born and raised, I have a pretty large family. We're all from Boston, and I relocated to Atlanta back in 2006.
Okay. All right. So when you were in Roxbury, where'd you go to school?
So I was a part of a program called Metco. And Metco was a program that was structured to take inner city kids out into the suburbs to go to school to achieve the goal of diversity on both sides. So I was able to get an education at a high school that had a high ranking in the suburbs. They were able to interact with urban youth from the city of Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you say you have a large family. How many siblings do you have?
So in my immediate family, I have a brother who's 10 years younger, and I have a sister who unfortunately passed away of cancer a couple of years ago, but she was a year older than me. So yeah. So there was three of us in our household in Boston.
Okay. So now you and your brother, are you guys close?
We are. So we don't see each other as often as we'd like to see one another. My brother is also living in Atlanta these days,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, he's in the entertainment industry and he travels a lot. He's very busy, and yeah, so we do get to see each other. My sister, who did pass away, also relocated to Atlanta about 4 years ago. So, needless to say, I've been in this area for now 18 years, and my entire immediate family followed me here. Include-
Wow.
yeah, including my mother, who retired from Northeastern University in Boston and came here in retirement.
Oh, you are an influencer. Okay. All right. So what did your you said your mom was at North, she was teaching?
No, she was an administrator. My mother ran a program that allowed students who wouldn't necessarily have SAT scores to get them directly into the curriculum that Northeastern was offering. So they was sort of like a staging prep program that allowed students from around the country to raise their game a little bit and then to migrate into the regular class, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So what did your dad do? What did you follow in your dad's footstep or
Interesting question. So, my biological father, and I say that because my mother remarried, but
okay.
he was out in LA, and he was an entrepreneur
Okay.
and very interesting guy. I did not follow in his footsteps. He was not as present in my life as he or I would have wanted him to be, but
Okay.
I think that really sort of that's a part of what stimulates my interest in doing this interview, because there are things that you need to learn along the way to make the adjustments for
Right.
your own family, and I think that started by my dad being absent in my life.
Oh, okay. All right. So um your biological father did things with you. What did he do? I mean, your your stepdad or your bonus dad,
Yeah,
or what the
yeah.
correct term is now. They don't they try to make it more positive. I like, you know, but truly, if he helped you financially, mentally, and physically to grow up, I would consider him your dad and
That's
your
true.
biological your father.
Yeah, I
That's my
like to make the
opinion.
distinction because they both play a role.
Right.
It is a very good question because my stepfather was very influential in my life. He's
Okay.
been in my life since I was 2 years old. So he is the man that I knew as my father.
Right.
As I got older, I met my biological father. But the value that both men brought into my life helped shape who I am today. So there's a
Okay.
mutual respect across the family dynamic.
Cool. All right.
Mhm.
So when you guys, when your stepdad and your siblings and your mom, what kind of activities did you guys do when you were growing up?
So I think that's another very very interesting question. My mother and father we had a large family in Boston, so we had a pretty solid family, broader family network. My grandmother was a wildly popular individual. My mother had 8 brothers and sisters. They all had 5 and 6 kids, with the exception of my mother. And, I had a ton of cousins. And our family dynamic was such that we celebrated our family life quite often, cookouts, travel together, those kinds of things. When I think about my mother and father in general, one of the things that stand out is that, they were really sharp and they understood what providing exposure for their
Mm-hmm.
children
Right.
and the benefits of that, what we're going to do for my life. So I went to camp when I was younger. I learned some skills at camp. Sailing would be one of them. I
Wow.
still sail to this day. Both of my daughters sail. I became a strong swimmer. Things of that nature. I learned archery and arts and crafts, and a lot of those skills that I learned in camp are
Mhm.
some of the things that I use today. And
Okay.
I pass those along to my children as well.
So after you graduated from high school, what was the career? What was the next thing you did to become a responsible adult, as they say?
Yeah, yeah. So I did do some schooling. Went to Northeast University in Boston where my mother worked.
Okay.
That was excellent. And I also joined the sheriff's department
Oh,
in Suffolk County, Massachusetts. I was there for 4 years as well. So these helped shape me, kind of made a man out of me. I
okay.
was growing up early at the time. So imagine doing police work at 18, 19 years old.
Wow.
It taught me a lot of responsibility and I think really set me on the course of maturity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you went to the sheriff's department. You stayed there 4 years. What led you to this new job, or did you have several other careers in between? Because you had to find you. I guess you've been in this a while, so you had to enjoy this. But did this come right after the sheriff's, or did you
Yeah,
dibble and dabble in some more careers and before you finally decide I love this one?
yeah. So yeah, you're right. There were some jobs in between, but the sheriff's department wasn't for me. I knew that early on. I had bigger and better things that I wanted to do, but it is a great career choice for a lot of individuals. It just wasn't the right career choice for me. When I left the sheriff's department, I went into sales. In fact, I went into retail sales. But when I got into retail sales, I entered into retail sales at the highest level. And what I mean by that is I was selling to the top 2% income earners in the world. So that's different than working at the Gap. I wanted to be around, surround myself with people that had means. And there are some things that you can gain from that. I'll talk about that a little later on, probably. But, I got into that space. The money was there and sales really took off for me. I found out that I was a strong communicator and I liked interacting with people.
Okay. So this job puts you in tune with maybe like the top 1%, as they say. And did you, doing your networking, lead you to other, interesting and more profitable jobs?
I won't say that it was a direct link, but I will say that the skills that I gained young in my life, talking with people that were successful, that had money, they had means, they were traveling, you're sharing stories, you're being encouraged, you're seeing things that you're not necessarily seeing in other environments. So, these are all ways that help shape who you become.
Right.
So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right. So when did you decide that you would want to have a wife and a family? What
Wow.
made you do that?
So yeah, that's powerful. What made me do that is um I got custody of my daughter when she was 3 years old,
Okay.
and I'm in Boston, and I had to decide how I was gonna raise my daughter. And the woman that I was dating at the time was somebody that I truly was in love with, and she was in love with me, but I didn't necessarily know that I was ready to be married.
Okay.
When I got custody of my daughter, it just made sense to put the family dynamic into place. And I think that was one of the things that made me decide that maybe now's the time to sort of to buckle down and to try something different, and
So
that's
your
for the
so you
marriage.
and your daughter's mom were in a relationship. It didn't work out, or were you married and you got a divorce? And how did that happen that you had to seek custody of her?
Yeah, so the relationship didn't work out with my daughter's mother. Um, at the time, Massachusetts was interested in putting the child with the best possible parent to have the best possible outcome for the child. And after, I think you would call it, interviews and those kinds of things, they determined that I was a better fit to raise my daughter, and that's how it all got started.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you having a beautiful daughter and this lovely lady that you fell in love with and fell in love with you, that sent a little light off in your head saying, I have to make this right. And
That's right. That's
and
right.
so you guys got married and what happened after that?
We had an instant 3-year-old in the house.
Okay.
So, she became a parent overnight. I somewhat became a parent overnight. And, it was really time to chart the path. I felt like I had a pretty solid background. I came from a loving family. I understood the importance of certain things like, getting an education and making sure that, the children are nourished and that they have good habits and that they eat well. So you go right back to the basics. God kind of prepares you for that unknowingly, and if you're following that gut feeling, you're usually making some pretty solid choices.
Okay.
And I believe that was like the beginning of parenting for me.
Okay. So watching your parents and your grandparents gave you a greater foundation. You weren't just blind, but you could reflect on, like you say, you have aunts and uncles. So all of them, the same way, family, family unit, and your grandparents, they've been married. Has everybody been married over 10 or 15 years at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time?
yeah, for the most part. But people have different ways that they think. They have different approaches and ideas to things.
Okay.
I think when you have a family structure like I had, you get to sort of see things, that are in your immediate family, but then you learn a lot about your extended family, the family dynamic, getting to know your cousins, getting to know your aunts and uncles. I spent weekends with them, and playing in their neighborhoods, meeting their friends. So that was how our family was structured. I think there are a lot of valuable lessons to be learned in an environment like that. And I think, a lot of us struggle for that type of family dynamic, in 2023. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of value that I took away from that. I really feel good about the childhood that I had. And when I think about how I raised my children today, a lot of what I was doing is what I really wanted my children to be exposed to as well, because I think it's somewhat priceless. We need to get back to more of that.
Yeah, when you have that extended family, it makes a big difference.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it makes a big difference. So your wife, did she come from a large family? Did she grow up in the same town as you, or how'd you meet her?
Yeah, so my wife is not from Boston at all. In fact, she wasn't even an American citizen when I met her.
Okay.
I met my wife when she was in a master's program at Northeast University, but she's originally from Haiti, which is the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean.
Okay.
So this was probably back in 1998 or
Okay.
so when I met my wife. Mhm.
Okay. And so you got your background compared to her background. Um, how did that work out when you start saying, "Well, we do this"? Like, for instance, traditions and stuff like that. If like people on Thanksgiving, they have turkey. Did she
Right.
celebrate the same holidays as you, or did you? I mean, how did you guys work that out? Because now, she grew. I mean, it's the same for anybody that gets married. He brings his household. I mean, his values and stuff to me, and I bring mine to his. I have friends who they celebrate Christmas differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So his household said that we don't put any presents under the tree until the night before. Her household says you put them under there as soon as possible, and then on Christmas Eve you open up one present.
Right.
And of course, by him being a good husband, he went along with his wife's
Of
way.
course. Of
Right,
course.
but they were no, but they just grew up differently. But that's what she wanted. He loved her. He loves her, and so that's how they did. So, were there any things like that that you had to compromise on as far as the way she was raised? And
All of those things I had.
oh,
Yeah. So in Haiti, they do celebrate some holidays that
hmm,
Americans celebrate, Christmas being one of them. I believe my wife was raised Catholic.
okay,
So there were some traditional American holidays that were celebrated in Haiti, but Haiti had their own holidays as well, like their own Independence Day.
hmm,
And with respect to that, there are differences. You're combining lifestyles, you're combining, traditions and those kinds of things. And one of the things that I appreciated most about my wife is that she had her own identity being a Haitian woman. They have a sense of pride that you can't find in a lot of people around the world. And that sense of pride was infectious to me. At the same time, I had a massive family dynamic that my wife always craved.
wow,
Yeah, she talks to me about the fact that she didn't have a meaningful relationship with a grandmother, and that the lifestyle in Haiti was very different in terms of her family dynamic. Her sister, and her mother, and some of their cousins in Haiti are very close, but it's not the exact same. I think I have a special family dynamic, being so large and being from a small city like Boston. We all get to see each other, and my wife fell in love with that.
okay,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. That's
Hmm.
beautiful. So you got married, you became instant parents, and did you decide like we need to have another child, or when did you decide? What made you decide to have another baby?
So I knew it was on my wife's radar. I certainly wanted more children.
Okay.
I was shooting for a healthy child. I wanted a son. That didn't happen. I'm a girl maker.
Okay. You're a girl dad. Okay.
I'm a girl maker, a woman maker, that is.
Okay.
And yeah, so be it, right? So we did have we had our second child and our only child together back in 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, and we brought Jamila into this world. So I have two girls that I raised at home, Janasia and Jamila.
Beautiful names.
Yeah,
Beautiful names.
thank you.
So your parents and your grandparents, tell me about your parents. What was their thing? What was the lesson that they taught you and your brother and sister when you were coming? What was the advice that they always gave you about, being brothers and sisters, how to treat one another, how to treat people, and your grandparents, what did they try to make sure that some parents say, you got to get an education, you got to get an education. Some say, you got to get a job, you got to get a job. What was the pounding lesson that your parents or your grandparents would tell you and your siblings?
I can't remember anything specific
Okay.
that came out of either my mother or my father's mouth. I know that sounds kind of strange, but
No, no.
here's what I'll say. I had a wildly popular grandmother
Okay.
who was a well-known entity in Boston, and she had 8 kids, and we had a large known family.
Okay.
With that, comes a little bit of popularity to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Our family, a lot of the guys in my family, we look alike.
Okay.
And a lot of the women in the family, know a lot of people. So that's it. It was special just from that perspective alone. When I think about in my household, though, my mother was, she did the best that she knew how,
Right.
and I understood what that meant. And one of the best examples I can give you for that is that my mother worked at Northeastern for 44 years, and part of the reason why she stayed there is because she wanted to give her children an opportunity to go to college for free.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. So
That,
education was important to
it
you,
was
to her, for you guys to
that's
receive.
the takeaway. And
Okay.
I recognize that sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why, in her day and how she was raised, why that was so important. And to this day, I value that. I think it's one of the most, the best thing, one of the best things that my mother did for her children was to put us in a position to go to school.
Okay. And you all did go to school, correct?
Yeah. Not everyone graduated now,
All
but
right.
we made solid attempts.
That's all you could
I'm
ask.
speaking for myself. Yeah,
That's all you could ask. But we always want the best for our kids, and
that's
we put
true.
them in a position so they can at least try.
That's true.
Okay, so they can at least try. So who do you influence? Who do you think influenced you as a dad? Was it an uncle? Was it your stepdad? Was it I should say your dad? Or did you have friends who you watched their fathers? What was your influence to become a dad?
So my stepfather was he was a master communicator. I spent a lot of time with him, barbershops on the weekend, hanging out. He used to drag me jogging with him on the weekends and those kinds of things. And I used to watch how he managed relationships with people.
Mhm.
And one of the takeaways was, that's kind of stuff gets instilled in you. You see it, you understand it. There's a dynamic to it. You see it work. You see things work,
Right.
and you see what doesn't work. And so I say, there was a lot of direct coaching that I can remember, but the influences were the situations that we were in,
Okay.
and taking lessons out of those situations. and understanding, how to deal with those situations when they came about as I grew into manhood and
So
was ready.
give me a for instance of a situation that you thought your stepdad handled, and you like, okay, that's how you handle situations like that.
I think I'm trying to think of an example that would make sense for this interview. I would say that having an outgoing personality, meaning not being afraid to introduce yourself. One of the things that I learned, and I think this is really powerful as well, is my father wasn't a stranger anywhere that he went.
Okay.
So, he's the type of person, if he walked into a room and he didn't know everybody in the room, and it was a room, full of black folks, for instance, or he would make it his business to get to know people, to introduce himself, and to reach out and to network. And I think that attribute rubbed off on me because that's part of what I do today. And what I've learned that the value from that is that you never know who you're gonna meet. You never know, the type of resources that you can have access to. And I really believe that there's a lot to be said about just the fellowship that you can have with individuals by taking the first step. So I will say that that's one of the key things that I learned from my father was to be like that.
All right. So that's good information. That was good. Yeah. All right. So now you've got your wife, you've got your kids. You said you want more, but you stopped at two. Was that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I'm all done. I'm all done. The two's enough,
All right.
and
So
yeah, very 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 satisfied with the two lovely women I have in my life. Sure.
how old are they now?
Yeah. So my youngest just turned 21
Okay.
in July, and my oldest is 27, who will be turning 28 in January
Okay.
2020.
So both of them in college or went to college.
Yeah.
Is the 21-year-old out of college or she's still in college?
She's a senior in
Okay.
college in a pre-law track, and she was just calling me prior to this call from you to let me know that she got her LSAT scores back. So I'm dying to
Okay.
hear.
Okay. All right. We'll try to speed it up. So the oldest, she's graduated, and what's
Yeah.
her career choice?
Yeah, so she went on to be, well, she didn't go to law school, which was a part of the original plan for her. She wanted
Okay.
to go to law school, is what we talked about, something she wanted to do. That didn't happen.
Okay.
But my daughter did go on to do a lot of philanthropy work. She was working with one of the largest aquariums in the New England area, and then went to work for the Boston Red Sox in a diversity capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you help her when you say she wants to become a lawyer? Did you and your wife have input in that, or did she just come home from school and say, "Dad, Mom, I want to be an attorney"?
So
How
I
did
have
that
I
happen?
have a story to tell about that.
Okay.
So I moved to Georgia back in 2006. When I got here, my daughters were 4 and 10.
Okay.
One of my neighbors that lived on my street invited me over his house, and he just so happened to be their pediatrician as well.
Okay.
And he had two daughters, and both of his daughters were my daughter's age. So we made a connection. We had
Okay.
the daughters, the wives. So he's an MD, and I'm over his house for the first time, and I'm in his office, and I look up on his wall. He's got his MD, and then right under that, he had a law degree.
Wow.
I says, Mike, you're a lawyer as well? He says, yeah, I'm a lawyer. I says, I mean, you're a why would you want to be a lawyer? He says, well, having the law degree provided me with the foresight and the opportunity to own my own business. And he says, where I wanted to take my medical practice, my law degree is what put me in a position to make that happen. And that stuck with me. So I used to tell my daughters, I don't care whatever else you do, I want you to have a law degree to complement that.
That's cute.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cute.
I'm
Okay.
dead serious.
So, oh, so they tried. The oldest tried,
Yeah.
and she found she didn't like it, or and the next thing you know, she found something better that she enjoys. Now, is
Well,
she a sports person?
yeah. So both of my daughters swam in high school.
Okay.
My oldest daughter was more competitive in swimming than my youngest daughter, but my youngest daughter was also competitive in basketball.
Okay.
So, they enjoyed it at the high school level, but neither one of them participated in sports at the college level.
All academics is that what they
Yes.
do? They're
Yeah.
concentrating on it. Okay.
Yeah. They both went to schools of
Okay.
rigor.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So when they were in high school, what type of information, what type of advice were you giving them about, staying the course and blah 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 and all of that stuff?
So, of course, you want your children to do well. But parenting is about shaping their minds to accept the information so you can do well. And I
Right.
think, that's one of the things that I learned growing up. It's not just telling your kid that they need to do something.
Right.
It's helping them understand why it's important. And when they understand the purpose behind what they're doing, the outcome is usually more favorable.
Yes.
People will invest in more of what they believe in as opposed to just what they're being told. So the way that I, communicated with both of my daughters wasn't you need to do this, you need to do that. It was if you do these things, then these other things will happen.
Right.
And they subscribe to that. So both of my daughters were extremely uh, 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 they had a very high capacity for learning. My oldest daughter, Lord knows where this comes from, but I was told by teachers and administrators that, hey, listen, your daughter, she's really gifted in academically. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds fine. Yeah, I understand that. But no, they was like, no, wait, hold on. You need to understand something. They said it's different when, you have a student that might be gifted in math,
Mm-hmm.
or they may have, standout scores in English. He
Mm-hmm.
says, your daughter is in the top 2% across everything that we measured.
Wow.
So that was like mind blowing to me. But it told me that she had the capacity to learn, and she did. And I wanted to make sure that I used that information to strengthen her position throughout her young years, while simultaneously allowing her to be the child that they need to be
Yes.
and to grow in the direction that they need to be. But I do have a philosophy that's very different than what's being taught today in some of the schools, and I'll share that with you.
Okay.
A lot of parents have this idea that, yeah, you want to let the kids grow up, do what they want to do, and they'll eventually figure it out. And there's some truth to that, because we all know the stereotypical ethnic groups where, the children may not be making that choice for themselves. They come out, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer, you're gonna, we've seen and heard about that kind of thing, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm
Okay.
talking about true guidance to help your children understand how to maximize the strengths that they have, and not
Right.
necessarily pushing them into any particular career. So even with the law school component, that was something that I think I burned in with repetitive talk, and
Okay.
really, taking Mike's philosophy and mixing it in. because at the end of the day, I'm like, listen, this is only going to help you reach your goals. So if these are your goals, then we really want to understand what path you want to take to get there. And as your parent, as your father, I want to be in a position to help guide you along that journey. So that's really what it is for me.
Yeah, my grandson said a lot of stuff that he did as a kid he would not have done if we would have told him why.
Yep.
Because my era grew up where mom said something and you asked her why, she said because I said so.
Right.
And so he was saying if me and his mom would have said, or his dad would have said, don't do this because of that, if we would have just answered why.
Right.
He said a lot of stuff. He said because it's unclear to a kid when you just say do it.
Right. So that's the science that I figured out as well. I didn't like the idea behind just being told to do something.
Right.
I actually responded to the why, and the why helps you understand what it is that you're doing. And
Right.
having that purpose, I think, goes a long way. And when you're looking at your track record of success and why things turn out the way, you can't dismiss it. You have to say that it all matters. So it's it's the approach that matters as well.
Absolutely. So now in this age of social media, this era of social media, while they're in school and stuff, what advice did you give them about like self-esteem, bullying, peer pressure? Did you have to deal with any of that? And once upon a time, it was unfashionable to be very, very intelligent and to show it. But it doesn't sound like that was ever an issue with your daughters.
Well, I can't say that that's exactly true, but here's what I'll say. I grew up in a household where I was taught to love myself.
Good.
I was instructed to read certain books that reinforce self-confidence.
Okay.
And that same type of nurturing is what I pass along to my daughters.
Good.
And the social component and the power of influence outside of your household is real.
Yes.
But when you have a value system, and if you have a value system in place and you reinforce that with knowing who you are and having pride in who you are and loving yourself, those are pretty strong barriers that can defend off, a lot of those external forces. It's not impervious, but it does help. The child that doesn't have any of those things is oftentimes, falls victim. And it doesn't mean that they can't grow out of it, but it does create setbacks. So it's very, very important to have that established. So I recommended at a certain age that my daughters read 2 particular books,
Okay.
as they become young women. And I think, going out into the world with certain kinds of information really arms you against what's outside of your household that might be coming at them all the time.
Okay. And what were those books that they read?
So one of them was the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Okay.
And the other was what's the proper title here? The Crisis of a Black Intellectual Negro.
Okay.
By Harold Cruz.
Okay. So they got their self-esteem all together. They understand who they are. So
gotta have it.
Okay, so they're getting up in age now, that maybe they're teenagers. Were they allowed to date when they were in school? Did they think about dating?
Yeah, they were. I had the traditional position,
which is
interviewed a kid with the shotgun by my side. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. One of the things that I would tell some of the guys is, listen, my daughters come from a household where they're loved.
Okay.
And look them in the eye when I tell them that. That's what I would say.
What was the reaction?
There was, I understand.
Okay.
That was the typical reaction.
Did you find out their parental background? Did you find out if they had two parents, one parent, if they, if they worked, if they got good grades? Did you do all of that before your daughters were allowed to date them?
I was less interested in that personally because my wife was the czar of that.
Oh, okay. She did the background checks.
Right. Both of us didn't need to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
when she showed interest in doing that, I kind of let her take that one. But we think similarly.
Okay.
So I'm sure. My wife makes recommendations, or she's one to I would tease her. She's one to say no before she understands exactly what's being asked.
Oh,
And
okay.
and I'm the person that's going to listen to everything, ask some questions, and and then make an assessment, and then and then kind of come down with the answer. But I gave both of my daughters the flexibility that they wanted. I don't think neither one would say that they were deprived of doing the things that they wanted to do. But you have to have boundaries.
Right.
And the boundaries were in place. Okay. Now, both children have their own minds, and both children will test the boundaries differently.
Yes.
My oldest daughter did not do what was asked of her some of the times, but how she dealt with that created problems for her. Whereas my youngest daughter, she kind of understood what the blueprint was, man. She just had it down packed. She had to be home at 11, and, her friends just ordered pizza and they know it's showing up at 10:30. I might get a call from my youngest daughter. Hey, Dad, we're over here having a good time. I know you told me to come back at 11. Do you think it's okay if I hang out for another half hour? I think we'll be finished up around 11. And, what can you say after that? It's like, okay. So as long as the communication was there and I understood, right, and you were playing the game the right way, you could get whatever you want most of the time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So they're pretty obedient and so forth. Were they given cars when they were in the school? Did they get cars? Were they allowed to work part-time jobs?
Yeah. So
what did you give them?
Yeah, my oldest daughter had a tougher time with that.
Why?
Well, because she was, she had her own, she was kind of marching to her own beat on certain things. She was learning things the hard way. So the car component was earned.
Okay.
So when you get into college freshman year, you can't have a car on campus.
Okay.
In either one of the schools that my daughter went, they went to separate schools.
Mm-hmm.
But my oldest daughter, never earned or showed that she was responsible to have a car at school. Okay. So, the sacrifice that I would have made would be to spend the money to buy her the car.
Right.
But that's I was willing to do that, but she had to meet a certain criteria. You had to maintain your grades. You had to demonstrate that you were being responsible, in certain areas. And my older daughter in her freshman and sophomore year struggled with some of that early in college. Whereas with my older daughter, she kind of saw the mistakes that her older sister was making and said she didn't want to make the same mistakes. So, her privileges were different.
Right.
But, I used to test my daughters, though. Like, here's an example. My youngest daughter, she actually earned her car as a senior in high school.
Wow. Okay.
So now she's going to college, and she's not able to bring her car freshman year, so the car stays home. Mm-hmm. She's traveling home during the holidays, and she's got her car here, visiting her friends, no problem. Well, her sophomore year comes up, And she's like, Dad, I think I want to bring my car to school this year. And I
Okay.
was like, really? I says, why do you think you want it? She says, well, I want to be able to get around. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. I'm like, well, it's going to be a huge responsibility. You're a sophomore. I says, you're going to be everybody's chauffeur. You're going to, it's going to be your gas that you're burning and things like that. And my daughter said, well, I really never thought about it that way. She says, half of my friends already have cars. And I'm now rethinking whether or not I want to bring it. I said to her, well, it's your choice. You let me know what you come up with. And before school started, she came up to me and said, I want to leave my car home.
That was good. That was good decision making. That was good.
Yeah,
Telling her the pros and cons of what
yeah,
she's about to do.
That's right.
Yeah, I love the communication. I love that. I love
Now that changed up. That changed up the junior year though.
Okay.
So she goes her whole sophomore year. She didn't come back during Christmas talking about, can I bring my car for second semester? She didn't do that.
Okay.
She kept the car at home, but now she's here for the summer. And she came up to me, about a month before school starts back for her junior year. She says, Dad, I think I want to bring my car to school with me my junior year. Here's the reason why.
Oh, okay.
I spent X amount of dollars on Uber. I was doing DoorDash. I was, all the money and the time that I'm spending trying to get around. I know the town that I'm going in school a lot better. I can get around, so I feel more acclimated. I feel safer, So she made a very compelling case
to take her car back.
To take her car back.
Yeah.
And guess what? I had no problem setting it up so she can get it there.
Good. So now you help them with their career decision. You help them with their decisions just while they're in school. Have you talked to them about like your financial advice? Have you given them advice about credit? Like your oldest daughter using the 401k, renting, buying. What kind of financial advice have you given them? You've told them the basic, day-to-day life advice.
Yeah, no, you're right. So, these are really important questions. So I'll just let you know that I didn't really help my daughters with career choices. In fact, neither one of my daughters are doing exactly what they want to be doing long term.
Okay.
But they're on their path to doing what they want to do, and that's what makes me happy.
Good.
What I'll say in response to your question is guidance is key, right?
Yes.
Guidance is key. This is all that parenting truly is, and people have different ways that they view these things. I want to give you just a quick example. I taught both of my daughters how to drive a car. Okay. I think that's a fundamental skill that people need to learn.
Yes.
But the way that somebody might teach their child how to drive might be different than the way that I teach my children how to drive. I think that operating an automobile and driving are two different things. Driving to me is understanding the roads and understanding your situational awareness when you're operating a car. So when I was teaching my daughters how to drive, I was also teaching my daughters how to pay attention to what's around them and to understand where they are, understand that, when you get to this intersection, you can look this way and see the oncoming cars. That allows you to make a judgment call. You're teaching them the full perspective.
Right.
And when you do that, I think you give them better driving capabilities, right?
Right.
The financial component is the same way. One of my biggest pet peeves is that they don't teach our children anything about financial literacy in high school. Right? So, who's going to teach them? If you're not teaching them, then society will teach them.
Correct.
Social media We'll teach them. So you have to, I thought it was important to expose them to the fundamentals. And, typically and this happens early in high school, earning money, saving some money, enjoying yourself, but, putting some aside for a rainy day. These general principles that I don't think I necessarily had as a child, I knew were really important because I'm living as a grown man paying bills. And I know I didn't have some of these skills taught to me when I was younger. So it was really important to pass that information on when they were younger so they can use it as young
Right.
adults.
True.
Needless to say, I have two daughters that like to spend money, but they like to save money as well.
Good.
And and that's really the best that you can do on the and make sure they understand investing and those kinds of things. And I'm not an expert by any means, but you got to expose them to it so they understand that these tools exist.
Right.
And the key is you want them to understand that these tools exist early and not when they're in their 40s.
True.
The investment opportunities are now. When you're working as a young person, you could still be putting away for your 401k and getting a plan in place for long-term savings. It's important.
It's true. All right. So when they become of age, when they decide they want to get married, what advice are you going to give them about choosing a husband?
I haven't given that much thought. But
Okay.
if I'm gonna, think right off the top of my head, I want to say that you know, the person who loves you for you and that treats you the way that you want to be treated is a great start.
Okay. So, do you want them to marry a man like you?
Yes and no. So I think I have some attributes that make me a catch. My wife will tell you that she thinks I'm a catch, and that's nice to hear. So, but I have my share of problems. I grew up in urban environments. There's baggage that's associated with that to some degree. I'm not sure if that's exactly what I want my daughters to have. But what I do admire about my upbringing is the combination of urbanism and suburbanism, being able to bring those two together makes us stronger overall. And I think that my children both have a sense of that. And with that sense is common sense. So I'm expecting them to make good choices.
All right. Um, so you moved from Boston to Atlanta. What made you relocate from the East Coast to the South? Was it the weather or what?
Yeah, the weather's a part of it, but it's really the lifestyle change.
How
One of
so?
the things, one of the things that my biological father taught me is if you disconnect yourself from everything that you know and take yourself out of a particular type of comfort zone,
Mhm.
you have a tendency to grow in new areas.
Ah, okay.
And one of the things that I hadn't experimented with was leaving Boston.
Mm.
The one of the things that I learned, the takeaway is that I didn't experience the maturity and the growth that I have today until I left Boston. I had to leave my homies. I
Uh-huh.
had to leave the familiarity. I had to take a step outside of my comfort zone and learn how to survive in a different way to grow in the way that was going to bring me happiness.
Okay.
And moving to Atlanta from Boston did that to me, for me, excuse me. But you do miss your hometown. I'm
Yes.
still the biggest Boston sports fan in the world. I still love all of my Boston sports teams. One of the things that I miss most is the sound of the ocean.
Mm.
I lived close to the beach when I was in Boston. I used to enjoy going to the ocean and listening to the seagulls and hearing the waves come in and crash. I miss that. I don't have those things in Atlanta.
Right.
I also miss skiing.
Mm, wow.
The good news is I can afford to travel to ski now.
Yes.
I
Amen.
can, if I want to go ski, I can fly to Colorado, fly back to Boston.. I can still ski.
Right.
And then the other thing, finally, on that is you can if you move somewhere else and it doesn't work out, Boston ain't going nowhere. You could always go back. but
Excellent.
but
Excellent.
but I never went back. I only go back to visit because this is my new home. I will tell you that it's priceless to go and visit your old childhood friends, but there's something to say about getting on the plane and then flying into the metro Atlanta area, looking out the window, seeing all the beautiful homes and the trees and the greenery. That brings comfort that I can't find where I grew up. And that's what I desire today. So,
All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back.
Where are Black residents migrating to? What are these new cities that we are now calling home? Number 1, Atlanta, Georgia. Number 2, Houston, Texas. Number 3, Dallas, Texas. Number 4, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Number 5, Seattle, Washington. Number 6, Las Vegas, Nevada. Number 7, Orlando, Florida. Number 8, Phoenix, Arizona. Number 9, Columbus, Ohio. Number 10, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Welcome back, everybody, to Real Dad Speak. I'm speaking with my guest, Jay Hughes, and we're talking about relocating your family from the East Coast to the South. And right now, Jay, we've got to the portion of the show where I have what I call my final five, either
okay.
questions or fill in the blanks. And number 1, what's the best advice you have received about being a girl dad?
Love your daughters and love them well. Because what you teach them is what they're going to expect from a man in the future. You are the example.
All right. Number 2, what advice would you give a dad who's thinking about relocating to another state? Although you just explained, what you felt about relocating. And why did you choose Atlanta? Why didn't you choose Florida or somewhere else?
Yeah. So the idea behind relocating is about growth.
Okay.
For me, the disconnect is where your focus shifts because you got to survive in a new place.
Right.
I think there's a lot to be said about what that does for an individual. And it doesn't necessarily mean moving to a warm climate like Atlanta either. It just might be moving away from what you're familiar with.
Mhm.
Give yourself a chance to meet new people and to interact with people that are unfamiliar to you. And you'll probably experience new things that'll bring happiness to you.
All right. Number 3, how important is communicating with your children? And how often and what method do you use? Do you talk? Do you text? Or do you video chat with them?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. Communication is critical. It's a necessity. You have to do it. If you're not communicating with your children, someone else is. So, there has to be at least a balance in that.
Right.
Even if it's their boyfriend or something, like you got to have your perspective in their ear. So I believe that it's critical. And I believe that, your children grow up to understand and respect why it's so important to do that.
Okay. So do you video chat? Do you talk? Or do you text? Or all of the above?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of all of those things because my children are, they're from the generation where texting and video chat is sort of their main choice of communicating. But I like the traditional way of being on the phone. But even more traditional than that is, in person.
Okay. All right. Number 4. What do you think is important for your children to know about you as a man and as their father?
I think it's extremely important that they know that I love them forever, and that the decisions that parents make are always from the heart, and for their children or with their children are really to help them put them in the best possible spot moving forward. That's what we want. We all want to see our children be successful and thrive and grow up to be responsible adults. And that was the mission that I was on, and I think they understand that.
Okay. My last one. This is a fill in the blank. The thing or the things that make me sleep good at night are, or the thing that makes me sleep good at night is, or the things that make me sleep good, the things that make me sleep good are, if you have more than one thing that makes you sleep good at night.
Is knowing that my family's safe.
Okay.
And also, in a broader context, knowing that we have a promising future.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jay. You've been very interesting. And just like I suspected, you sound like a great dad.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Continued success with your children's education and their career goals and so forth and so on. And hopefully we will be talking soon.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
All right. You're welcome. All right, everybody. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Real Dad Speak podcast. It comes on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. You can find it on YouTube or Spotify. Thanks for joining us.